Therapists call it complex trauma. They've got charts and theories for it, thick textbooks filled with clinical terms. But they don't have a single word, not one, for the specific, gut-wrenching hollowness you feel when you finally realize you were nothing more than a weapon. A living, breathing, unwitting weapon, wielded by someone else to destroy the only mother you ever truly loved. It's a unique kind of ache, a phantom limb of loyalty you amputated yourself. It all started with a lie, a whisper, really, that grew into a roar. A lie I was far too young to recognize for the venom it was, but old enough, tragically, to make it my own truth. It burrowed deep, took root, and eventually poisoned everything good I held dear. The worst part? For years I defended that lie, believing it was mine, believing it was justice, when all along it was just the sharpest edge of someone else's bitterness. I was 8 years old when Mom, my stepmom technically, though that word always felt like a clumsy, ill-fitting shoe, came into my life. I remember bracing myself, half expecting her to glide in like one of the wicked stepmothers from the fairy tales my friends delighted in recounting, all sharp angles and colder-than-ice smiles. Instead, she showed up with a beat-up Darth Vader lunchbox, because she'd somehow heard, through the grapevine of a shy 8-year-old's whispers, that I liked Star Wars. And inside that iconic black helmet, not some elaborate gourmet meal, but crustless peanut butter sandwiches, cut into perfect triangles, just the way I liked them. That tiny, seemingly insignificant detail still catches in my throat, still stings with a bitter sweetness when I remember it. Because it wasn't just a sandwich, it was the first time an adult had truly listened to something small, something personal I liked, and simply delivered. No fanfare, no grand gesture, just a quiet, thoughtful understanding that made me feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in a long time. It was a simple act, but it spoke volumes, carving out a space for her in my guarded little world. Dad worked nights at the mill, the rhythmic hum of machinery often lulling me to sleep from across town. So, most evenings, it was just her and me. Our evenings were a quiet symphony of domesticity. She'd help me build towering Lego castles and intricate spaceships on the living room carpet, the tiny, unforgiving plastic bricks leaving constellation scars on her knees, little red imprints that she'd just laugh off. She never complained, never once suggested we move to a table. The carpet was our kingdom, and those brick marks were battle scars she wore with pride. I remember one particularly frustrating evening, struggling with a third-grade science test. The word metamorphic kept tripping me up, a tongue twister that felt impossible to pronounce, let alone understand. She didn't just explain it. She turned it into a rap song, a goofy, rhyming chant that made the complex geological process stick in my head. Metamorphic rocks. They change their looks, from heat and pressure, right out of the books. I aced that test, and for years after, whenever I saw a rock, I'd hear her silly rap in my head. We weren't blood, not by any biological definition, but in those moments, we rhymed. Our lives, our rhythms, they just clicked. Birthdays, especially, felt like intricate conspiracies between us. She'd bake a cake, always a little lopsided, a charming testament to her baking prowess, or lack thereof, but always delicious. She'd hide one present, just one, in the laundry basket or behind a stack of old magazines, just to extend the surprise, to drag out the pure, unadulterated joy of the day. One year, she saved for 6 months, meticulously setting aside every spare dollar, to buy me a second-hand drum kit. The cymbals were scratched, the snare a little loose, but to me, when I hit them, they sounded like the roar of a stadium crowd. Thunderous applause just for me. She sat through every headache-inducing practice session, earplugs poking out like bright orange antennas, clapping offbeat, a goofy, encouraging smile on her face. That was my normal. Someone choosing me again and again, deliberately, unconditionally, without a biological mandate. It wasn't an obligation for her. It was a choice, a profound daily affirmation. Then came the moment that sealed it, the moment that still echoes with bittersweet clarity. I called her Mom by accident one afternoon. It just slipped out, a natural, unthinking utterance. I froze, mortified, my heart hammering against my ribs, fully expecting correction, a gentle reminder that she wasn't my real mom. Instead, she teared up, a single glistening tear tracing a path down her cheek. "I've been waiting for that slip," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. And then she hugged me so hard, so fiercely, that my socks literally popped off my feet. It was a hug that conveyed years of unspoken love, a silent promise of belonging. That's the memory I return to, time and time again, when self-doubt creeps in, when I need to feel worthy of love, worthy of simply existing. And it's also the memory, the sacred foundational memory I tried my absolute best to annihilate when I was 15. The irony, the sheer, crushing irony, is not lost on me now. Dad's ex-wife, my biological mother, Claire, had always floated in and out of my life like a bad weather pattern. Unpredictable, often stormy, and rarely bringing anything good. She paid child support exactly twice a year, as legally mandated, always accompanied by a new boyfriend who de-lecture me on discipline or character, their words hollow and meaningless. Her visits were sporadic, her interest fleeting, a cameo appearance in the ongoing drama of my childhood. When I was 14, that pattern shifted dramatically. Claire moved back to our town, not for a fleeting visit, but with a sudden, unsettling permanence. And with her return came a new agenda. She decided she wanted full custody, not, as I later found out in a chilling voicemail I wasn't supposed to hear, because she missed me or longed for my presence. No, her cold, calculating words to her sister were, "It'll cut that paycheck I send in half." The shock of hearing that, of being reduced to a financial burden, was a bitter pill. It was the first crack in the foundation of my biological loyalty, a tiny fissure that would later widen into a chasm. Claire's first move, subtle at first, then increasingly overt, was to plant the insidious idea that my stepmom was an intruder. She'd pick me up for weekend dinners, speaking only in hushed tones, as if sharing a profound secret. Her questions were never innocent. They were laced with gasoline, designed to ignite suspicion. "Does she read your diary? Ever smack you for talking back? You can tell me, honey, I'm your real mom." I laughed it off at first, genuinely. This was the woman who forgot my birthday 3 years running, the one whose calls were always brief and transactional. How could she possibly know my stepmom, my mom, better than I did? But repetition, I soon learned, is a powerful solvent. It doesn't just chip away at stone. It softens truth until it feels pliable, until doubt can be molded into conviction. Week by week, the narrative shifted, subtly at first, then with increasing force. Claire became a meticulous collector of tiny grievances. A missed dentist appointment, a C in algebra, a slightly late pickup from school. Each became a piece of evidence, meticulously catalogued and presented as proof of my stepmom's neglect. She never yelled, never raised her voice. Instead, she'd sigh, a deep, weary sound that conveyed profound concern. "I'm just worried about your safety, baby." She'd murmur, her eyes wide with manufactured anguish. That word, safety, was like a cold, clammy hand gripping my stomach. I didn't feel unsafe at home, not with my stepmom. But if a parent, especially your biological parent, worries so deeply, surely there must be fire beneath all that smoke, right? Surely her concern couldn't be baseless. Then came the secret iPhone, a sleek new device with a passcode only Claire and I knew. It was our private line, a direct conduit for private texts, a digital umbilical cord that bypassed my father and stepmom entirely. At night, after everyone else was asleep, her messages would flood in. Memes ridiculing step-parents, little jabs dressed as jokes, designed to sow seeds of resentment. When I didn't reply immediately, or if my responses were lukewarm, she'd type, with an almost desperate urgency, "You're still my flesh. Blood always wins." It was a powerful mantra, a seductive lie. I wanted to believe loyalty was purely biology. It saved me from the uncomfortable, unsettling work of thinking, of questioning, of choosing. It offered a simple, immutable rule in a world that was suddenly feeling very complicated. The coup de grace, the final devastating blow, came during Christmas break. Claire, with a flourish, presented printouts of Facebook photos. My stepmom, laughing, holding a glass of wine at a neighborhood barbecue. Red circles, drawn with a thick, ominous marker, slashed across the cup. "See?" Claire declared, her voice dripping with manufactured triumph. "She's drinking around minors. If you back me, we can end this. We can get you out of there." I knew, with a certainty that was quickly eroding, that Mom drank half a spritzer once in a while, maybe a single glass of wine with dinner. So did every adult I respected, every parent I knew. Yet Claire kept calling it documented proof, a damning indictment. Slowly, insidiously, I began to see my stepmom through a funhouse lens. Every laugh seemed slurred, every embrace calculated, every kind word a veiled manipulation. The poison was working. Claire's final weapon, the one that truly broke me and turned me into her pawn, was the most effective because it struck at the heart of my stepmom's connection to my dad. She told me my stepmom had stolen Dad from her, that their entire marriage was built on betrayal, on a foundation of lies and deceit. Never mind the inconvenient truth that the divorce had happened years before Dad even met. My stepmom. Facts felt flimsy, easily dismissed, compared to the theatrical grief Claire performed. She'd break into wrenching sobs, mascara striping her cheeks like war paint, a tragic figure of wronged innocence. And then she'd whisper, her voice raw with manufactured pain, "Your dad replaced me, and now she's trying to replace you." The implication was clear, a terrifying, unspoken threat. If I didn't choose Claire, didn't align myself with her, I'd lose my real mother, maybe forever. The fear of that abandonment, of severing that last biological tie, was a powerful, paralyzing force. I'm 29 now, almost 30, and the fog has long since cleared. With the clarity that distance and therapy provide, I can label what Claire did, precisely, scientifically even. It was a textbook case of parental alienation, a masterclass in gaslighting, a weaponized application of guilt designed to sever the deepest bonds. But back then, at 15, it just felt like gravity. An inescapable, crushing force pulling me towards one parent, away from the other. Kids, especially young ones, desperately want to believe their parents are the unwavering center of the moral universe, that they are good, infallible, trustworthy. So when one parent, especially a biological one, insists, with every fiber of their being, that the other is evil, manipulative, a threat, you pick sides. You have to. It's a primal instinct, a frantic scramble to keep the floor from disappearing beneath your feet, to maintain some semblance of stability in a world suddenly turned upside down. I picked Claire. Why? Because she was louder about her love, a more dramatic, more insistent declaration. And perhaps more powerfully, she was louder about her loss, her pain, her victimhood. Her narrative was compelling, emotionally charged, and it offered me a clear, albeit false, path to belonging and loyalty. It felt like an act of self-preservation, a desperate attempt to secure my place in the world, even if it meant sacrificing someone else's. I didn't realize then that the loudest voice isn't always the truest, and that sometimes the quiet, consistent love is the most profound. And I certainly didn't realize that in picking sides, I wasn't just choosing a parent. I was choosing a narrative, one that would haunt me for years to come. Spring semester, sophomore year. The legal papers arrived, thick and official, signaling the end of the quiet war and the beginning of open combat. Claire filed an emergency custody petition, citing alcohol abuse and emotional manipulation as the primary reasons. The court date landed 2 days after my 15th birthday, a cruel twist of fate that felt like a deliberate punishment for simply existing. She coached me for hours, drilling me relentlessly. Tell the judge you're scared to live there. Mention the wine. Emphasize how unstable she makes you feel. Her words were a script, carefully rehearsed, designed to sound authentic, to convey a fear I didn't truly feel. The morning of court, my stomach was a knot of raw nerves. I threw up twice, dry heaving until my throat burned. Claire, ever the opportunist, saw this as a positive sign. "See?" she'd said, patting my back with a clinical detachment. "Nerves mean you're growing a spine, honey. You're finally standing up for yourself." It wasn't courage, it was terror, but I let her believe it. I needed to believe it. In that sterile beige courtroom, under the harsh fluorescent lights, I sat between two adults who both called themselves Mom. One, my biological mother, Claire, with a triumphant, almost predatory glint in her eye. The other, my stepmom, my mom, sat with a quiet dignity, her gaze fixed on the judge, her face a mask of controlled pain. When the judge, a stern, tired-looking woman in a black robe, asked why I wanted to switch homes, I recited the script. "I don't feel safe," I said, the words feeling foreign and hollow even as they left my lips. My voice cracked, a raw, involuntary sound that, ironically, made the lie sound like authenticity. It sounded like genuine distress. I felt my stepmom's eyes on the side of my face, a searing heat, searching for truth, for recognition, for some sign that I wasn't truly lost to her. I never turned to meet them. I couldn't. The weight of her gaze, the truth in it, would have shattered my carefully constructed facade. After my testimony, Dad's lawyer, a kind man who looked genuinely pained, requested a brief recess. In the hallway, as Claire pulled me close, whispering reassurances, my stepmom approached. Slowly. Her palms were visible, open, a gesture of peace, like you do with spooked horses, trying not to alarm them further. She walked as if through thick water, every step deliberate. When she reached me, she whispered, her voice barely audible, thick with unshed tears. "I love you no matter what you say today. You're allowed to be confused. You're allowed to feel whatever you need to feel." That raw, unconditional kindness, that profound mercy, almost unraveled everything. It was a lifeline thrown into a raging sea of manipulation, and for a split second, I almost grabbed it. But Claire, always vigilant, always controlling, yanked me back by the sleeve, her grip tight, almost bruising. "She's grooming you right now, can't you see?" she hiss-whispered, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Don't fall for it." I stuffed the mercy down, deep inside, where it festered like a wound. I swallowed hard, a dry, bitter gulp, and returned to the courtroom. I finished the job. The judge, her face unreadable, granted Claire temporary custody. I walked out of that courthouse, Claire's hand clutched tightly in mine, a forced smile on my face. Victory, I realized even then, could taste like tin, metallic and bitter, leaving a foul aftertaste. My stepmom stood on the courthouse steps, a solitary figure against the gray April sky, the wind whipping her hair into her mouth. She didn't cry, not outwardly. She just looked tired, bone-weary in a way I'd never clocked before, a profound exhaustion that went beyond sleep deprivation. She looked the way trees look after storms, still standing, yes, but bark stripped, branches broken, resilience tested to its very core. Dad drove me to Claire's that night, the car filled with a suffocating silence. Nobody spoke. The quiet between Dad and me had a tangible weight, like a third unwelcome passenger in the back seat, pressing down on us both. 2 weeks later, a single text message arrived on my secret iPhone. It was from an unknown number, but the words were instantly recognizable. "I'm here if you need pajamas, pancakes, or physics help, always." I deleted it immediately, my heart aching because Claire checked my phone while I slept, meticulously sifting through my messages. But I remember every emoji, every small, poignant detail. A little house, a bright red heart, a shooting star streaking across a digital sky. That text, those few simple words, haunted the next decade of my life like a benevolent ghost, a constant, nagging reminder of the love I had so cruelly cast aside. Living with Claire was a crash course in conditional affection, a masterclass in emotional manipulation disguised as motherly love. Grades above a B+ meant celebratory restaurant dinners, a brief respite from her critical gaze. Slipping below triggered the dreaded silent treatment, a chilling, soul-crushing withdrawal of affection that felt worse than any shouting. She dated a rotation of men, each one a different flavor of superficiality, who high-fived my achievements with back-slapping enthusiasm and conveniently vanished whenever my failures surfaced. I quickly learned to perform competence, to project an image of effortless success, to pretend that want was weakness, that vulnerability was a liability. It was a dangerous, exhausting game, and I became an expert player. Dad, bless his heart, tried to stay in the fight. He exhausted every legal avenue, every plea. But the legal fees bled him dry, leaving him financially and emotionally depleted. He took extra shifts at the mill, working until he was practically a ghost, just to keep up. We saw each other only on Sunday mornings, at various greasy diners, our conversations cautious, like stepping through a minefield of topics we couldn't afford to trigger. We talked about school, about the weather, about anything and everything but the gaping wound that separated us. I asked once, tentatively, how my stepmom was doing. Dad's eyes glassed over, a profound sadness clouding them. "She misses you, son," he said, his voice raspy. "But she understands you need space." I nodded, pretending that space was the same as exile, that understanding was the same as acceptance. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Junior year, a lifeline appeared in the form of an acceptance letter from a college across the country. It was my ticket out, my chance to escape the suffocating atmosphere of Claire's house. Claire, of course, immediately bragged that it was her doing, her rigorous structure, and unwavering discipline that had prepared me for such academic success. It was her victory, not mine. The night before graduation, she threw a party, a chaotic, boozy affair. She got sloppy drunk, as she often did, and cornered me in the kitchen, her breath reeking of cheap wine. "You're welcome for rescuing you," she slurred, her words thick and sloshing. "I saved you from that woman." In that moment, the old courtroom tin taste flooded my mouth. The bitter aftertaste of that hollow victory. I realized, with a sickening clarity, that victory, if left out too long, can rot. It can turn putrid, leaving behind nothing but the stench of regret. I left for campus, and, in truth, I never really came back. Holidays became a masterclass in manufacturing excuses, a demanding job at the library, essential summer courses, a sudden, unavoidable opportunity. Claire complained, of course, but never visited. Her interests, like a fickle weather vane, had already migrated to her new boyfriend's toddler, a fresh, unblemished canvas for her manipulations. I was an asset that had matured into mere nostalgia, a past triumph she could occasionally trot out, but no longer a current project. The silence finally was deafening. At 23, I landed a corporate job in a gleaming glass tower in a city I barely knew. From the outside, my trajectory looked stellar: an impressive salary, sharp suits, an apartment with granite counters and a view. I was, by all appearances, a success. Inside, however, I was a hollowed-out shell, a meticulously constructed facade. I couldn't hold friendships. Anytime someone offered genuine help, alarms fired in my head, a blaring internal siren. What do they want? What's the catch? I ghosted people with an almost professional efficiency, fading away until texts stopped, until calls went unanswered. I did it the way Claire ghosted Dad, a slow, insidious fade until I was just a memory, a question mark in someone else's contact list. Romance was even worse. My first serious girlfriend, a kind, perceptive woman, told me I kept one foot outside the door, always ready to sprint, always ready for the escape hatch. She was right. I'd perfected the art of ejecting before anyone could eject me, of preemptively abandoning before I could be abandoned. The fear of betrayal, of being hurt again, was a thick, impenetrable wall around my heart. After she left, taking a piece of me I hadn't realized was still capable of feeling, I spent nights scrolling through photos on my stepmom's Facebook. Yes, I'd remade a secret account, a clandestine window into the life I'd abandoned. I watched her run 5Ks, plant tomatoes in a vibrant garden, rescue senior dogs from shelters. She looked older, her laugh lines deeper, etched with the wisdom of time. But she was still the same. Someone who cultivated growth, who gave things room to breathe, room to bloom. She was everything I was not. Then, one crisp October evening, it all broke. I found myself on the floor of my sleek, minimalist kitchen, back against the cold, hard island, sobbing so hard I drooled, my body racked with an unfamiliar, profound grief. There was no immediate trigger, no dramatic event. Just a voicemail from Dad wishing me a happy birthday. His voice cautious, like he was calling a wild animal, unsure if it would bolt or attack. That gentle, tentative love, that quiet acknowledgement, cracked the dam I had built so painstakingly around my emotions. I cried until my ribs spasmed, until my eyes were swollen shut, until there was nothing left but a raw, aching emptiness. And then, in a desperate, almost primal urge for understanding, I Googled, "Why do I feel empty after winning?" That rabbit hole, that digital descent, led me to articles on complex trauma, on betrayal blindness, on the chilling phenomenon of parental alienation. I devoured them, reading until sunrise, my heart pounding with a mixture of terror and profound recognition. Someone, somewhere, had written field notes on my secret life, on the invisible wounds I carried. It was as if a hidden language had been revealed, giving names to the nameless pains that had defined my existence for so long. The hollowness, the trust issues, the constant vigilance, it wasn't just me. It was a consequence of the betrayal. Complex trauma isn't one singular dramatic wound, a clean break that can be set and healed. Oh no, it's a constellation of small, insidious cuts, collected over years, each one tiny but deep, each one leaving a lasting mark as you simply try to survive. It's the flinching at compliments, convinced there's an ulterior motive, a hidden agenda behind the kind words. It's the constant rehearsing of apologies for mistakes you haven't even made yet, a preemptive defense against an imagined accusation. It's treating every act of kindness like a loan, knowing, with bone-deep certainty, that it will come due, with compound interest eventually. It's living with a pervasive low-grade anxiety, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the rug to be pulled out from under you. And then, one day, it's also the moment, the terrifying, liberating moment. You realize the entire story you've been telling yourself. The narrative you've clung to for dear life is someone else's lie. A carefully crafted fiction, designed to serve their agenda, not yours. And you? You played courier for a decade, blindly delivering the poison, believing it was medicine, believing it was justice. That realization hits you like a physical blow, a sudden, sharp intake of breath that leaves you winded, disoriented. It's the moment you understand that your entire identity, your sense of self, has been built on shaky ground, on a foundation of another person's bitterness and manipulation. It's a hard truth, a brutal awakening, but it's the first step, the necessary, excruciating first step towards truly finding your own story. Therapy started the way most significant, life-altering things do, with a desperate, almost frantic curiosity disguised as a casual inquiry. I was at rock bottom, and the only way out was through. In that first session, sitting on a surprisingly comfortable couch, the therapist, a calm, observant man with kind eyes, simply asked why I booked the appointment. The words tumbled out, raw and unvarnished, a confession I'd held captive for 15 years. Because I betrayed the only person who never asked me to earn her love, I said, my voice cracking, the truth finally escaping. He didn't flinch, didn't offer platitudes or judgment. He just handed me a box of tissues and a timeline worksheet, a blank canvas upon which to map the wreckage of my past. We traced events, meticulously, painfully, session after session. We labeled emotions, giving names to the amorphous anxieties and nameless griefs that had haunted me. We drew family maps, charting the tangled, toxic relationships that had shaped my world. Every week felt like sanding scar tissue, an excruciatingly slow, painful, but utterly necessary process. Each layer removed revealed another, more tender one beneath, exposing old wounds to the air, allowing them finally to begin to breathe. It was a long, arduous excavation of my own soul. After 6 months of this relentless internal work, he suggested something radical, a letter to my stepmom. Not to send, he clarified, just to externalize the regret, to give voice to the unspoken. I started writing, hesitantly at first, then with a torrent of emotion. 20 pages became 30. Somewhere around page 40, the intellectualizing, the analyzing, the careful self-justification, all fell away. I stopped trying to explain why and started simply apologizing. A raw, unreserved apology for the pain I had caused, for the choices I had made, for the weapon I had become. And then, against all rational advice, against the ingrained fear of rejection, I mailed it anyway. Because fire, I realized, can't stay in the stomach forever. It has to be released, or it consumes you from the inside out. 3 weeks later, my phone rang, an unknown number. Old habits, those deep-seated, fossilized defense mechanisms kicked in. I let it go to voicemail, my heart pounding, a mixture of dread and a fragile, terrifying hope. When I finally gathered the courage to listen, her voice poured out. Older, yes, softened by time, but unmistakably hers. "I'd love coffee if you're ready," she said, her voice gentle, imbued with a grace I didn't deserve. No pressure. Pancakes on me. I replayed it 14 times, listening to every inflection, every breath. I cried in the office restroom, a torrent of tears that felt like years of pent-up sorrow finally releasing. And then, with a lightness I hadn't felt in decades, I booked a flight. We met at the same diner Dad and I used to visit, a place steeped in bittersweet memories. The vinyl seats were cracked like drought-ground earth, the air thick with the smell of coffee and nostalgia. She stood when she saw me, her eyes widening slightly, a flicker of surprise, and then pure, unadulterated relief. She hesitated for half a second, a moment of uncertainty, before she moved towards me, and then she hugged me. It wasn't a casual embrace. It was the kind of hug you give to something precious, something you thought you'd lost forever, something that's been dropped from a great height. Careful, grateful, fragile. It was a hug that conveyed both immense love and the profound weight of 15 years of separation. We didn't talk courtrooms or apologies for the first hour. Not directly, anyway. We talked about dogs, about our careers, about the weirdness of oat milk, and the absurdity of modern life. We skirted around the edges of the chasm that had separated us, slowly, carefully, bridging the gap with mundane, everyday conversation. When the check arrived, a silent signal that our time was drawing to a close, I finally gathered my courage. "I'm so sorry," I said, the words catching in my throat. "I'm sorry I became the knife." My voice was raw, thick with emotion. She reached across the table, her hand warm and strong, and squeezed mine. Her eyes, filled with a profound understanding, met mine. "You were a kid," she said softly, her voice unwavering. "Knives don't choose the hand." Those words, so simple, so profound, were an absolution I hadn't dared to hope for. They lifted a burden I hadn't realized I was still carrying, a weight that had crushed me for years. We've met every month since, a sacred ritual in our new fragile relationship. Sometimes, we drive past my childhood home, the house where we built Lego castles and learned about metamorphic rocks. She parks out front, lets me sit in the passenger seat, and grieve out loud, allowing me to process the echoes of what was lost and what has been found again. Recovery isn't linear, not by a long shot. Some weeks, I'm 8 again, secure on the Lego-scarred carpet, basking in her unconditional love. Other weeks, I'm 15, my throat raw from the perjury, the bitter taste of tin still lingering. But she signs every text with that same constellation of emojis: a house, a heart, a shooting star. Like she's rebuilding the constellations I tried so desperately to black out, one radiant star at a time. The cost of betrayal isn't paid once, like a single devastating bill. Oh no, it's amortized across years, an insidious, ongoing expense that chips away at your sense of self, your capacity for joy, your ability to trust. It's the deep-seated inability to accept genuine trust, always searching for the hidden agenda, the inevitable catch. It's the mornings you wake up with a quiet, certain dread, convinced that happiness is a clerical error, a temporary oversight that will soon be corrected. It's the hypervigilance, the constant scanning of faces and words for any hint of manipulation, any sign of the next betrayal. It's living with a perpetual armor, always ready for battle, even when there's no enemy in sight. But here's the unexpected interest, the surprising dividend of that pain. You develop an almost supernatural radar for manipulation, a finely tuned instrument that can detect the subtlest shifts in tone, the most carefully crafted lies. You cultivate a bone-deep, unwavering vow to never again be someone's weapon, someone's pawn. That promise, forged in the crucible of your own past, becomes a guiding star. It's a painful education, but a powerful one. Now, I speak at high school workshops, sharing my story with teenagers who might be caught in similar invisible traps. My voice is brief, often shaky, but it's honest, stripped bare of pretense. I see their wide eyes, their hesitant nods, their dawning understanding. Kids often ask if I forgive Claire. I tell them forgiveness isn't a finish line, it's a shoreline. I'm still rowing, still navigating the choppy waters of resentment and understanding. It's a journey, not a destination, a constant process of tending to the wounds, of choosing peace over bitterness, again and again. And sometimes, that's the hardest work of all. If you're watching or reading this, and you've cut off someone who loved you purely, unconditionally, simply because another, louder voice yelled louder, demanded more, manipulated better, I urge you, right now, to pause. Take a deep breath. And ask yourself, whose story are you truly living? Is it your own, forged from your experiences and your values? Or is it a script handed to you, a narrative born of someone else's pain or agenda? This isn't about blame, it's about liberation. Leave a comment below, no judgment. Seriously, none at all. Just tell us one tiny micro step you might take. Even if it's only following them on Instagram, sending a silent thought, or simply acknowledging the truth of your past to yourself. Healing starts micro. It begins with a single courageous step, often one that feels terrifyingly small, but carries immense weight. And if you're the parent on the other side of this, wondering if your kids ever come back, if the love you poured into them, the sacrifices you made, were all for naught, give this a like. Share it. Let the algorithm, in its mysterious wisdom, bring this message of hope to someone else who desperately needs to hear it. Because sometimes, just knowing you're not alone, that others have walked this path and found their way back, is enough to keep going. I can't rewrite that courtroom scene. I can't unsay I don't feel safe. Those devastating words that severed a bond I now cherish more than anything. The past is immutable, a fixed point in time. But I can, and I do, choose what voice carries forward from that moment. I choose to amplify the truth, to speak from a place of hard-won understanding, rather than the echoed lies of another. Mom once told me, in one of our quiet, reflective moments, that love is a verb disguised as a noun. It's not just a feeling, it's an action. You have to keep doing it, keep showing up, keep choosing it, every single day. So I call her every Sunday, a non-negotiable ritual. I send her ridiculous dog memes that make her laugh. I show up at her door with pancake mix and fresh berries when the world feels iron heavy, when the weight of life threatens to crush us. I do the work of loving, actively, intentionally. Complex trauma may live in my bones, a permanent resident, a quiet hum beneath the surface of my skin. But so does the profound, hard-earned knowledge that betrayal isn't a life sentence. It's a fork in the road, a critical juncture. One road leads to repeating the poison, to allowing the bitterness and manipulation to define your future. The other road, the infinitely harder but ultimately more liberating one, leads to cleaning it up, drop by painstaking drop. I'm still dripping, still cleaning, still navigating the messy, beautiful process of healing. And if you're holding poison someone handed you years ago, a toxic narrative, a corrosive belief, it's okay to set it down. You don't have to carry it anymore. The antidote, I've found, is usually the last thing we want to do. The most terrifying, most vulnerable act imaginable. Tell the truth, out loud, to the person we harmed, or to the person who harmed us, or even just to ourselves. Start there. The rest, all the healing, all the rebuilding, all the constellations waiting to be renamed, will follow.